Okay, it's the end of the session. This is Yoshi's roadmap to success. I was going to have Yoshi on my lap, but he did not want to be on my lap. So let's start off by talking about dog consent. A lot of us, we think of dogs as almost as our slaves. And when I tell these people, they're like, no, I love my dog. But we want you to do exactly what you want, when you want, how you want, without any deviation, and we don't want to pay them for it. That's pretty much the definition of a slave. So when it comes to dogs, I look for consent. Yosh, so what I do is I hold my hand out. A lot of people think it's to let the dog sniff. What I do is I hold my hand out. I want to see if the dog wants to engage with me. Does he lean forward and touch me with his nose? That's a way of saying, yes, I'd like you to pet me. If I put my hand out and the dog turns its head to the side, leans back, or ducks down, he's saying, I don't want to engage with you. I'm disengaging. If I continue to try to pet him because I think, hey, petting is a good positive thing, that's going to cause the dog to think, well, this guy's not listening to me. So some dogs will learn to growl, nip, or bite because the human is not listening to them. So because he's a little bit reactive on leash, I'm guessing it's not a huge case of people wanting to come up and pet him or that opportunity coming up. But what I would do is I would make sure that anytime somebody does want to pet him, can I pet your dog? Yes, but he's, we always want to make sure he's cool with it. So we just ask people to hold their hand out first and make sure he touches you with his nose to see if he wants to get petted. Sometimes he's a little bit aloof. You got to find your own way of saying that. And don't ever force your dog to meet. Oh, I used to have a Maltese and then it died with my wife and I've been wanting to pet and play with the Maltese. Do you think I could pet your dog? And your dog runs away and you force your dog, you're going to cause your dog to bite someone. So it's not your responsibility to take care of other people's needs. We always tell at Doggone Problems, we always say, always be the dog's advocate. So if your dog doesn't want to do something, don't force them. The more we force them, the more that they're going to resist. And that can also cause frustration and a lot of other behavioral issues that are usually worse than the original issue. So that's dog consent. We started off the session really talking about, we did kind of a great warm-up greeting. There you go, Yosh. Yeah, it's right, that's a leaf. This is the treat. Okay, and so we started off with a marker, going over marker words. And so a marker word is the word we use when the dog does what he wants. So I'm going to lure him into a sit, butt hits the ground, I say thanks, and I put the treat in his mouth. So you want to say your marker word the instant the dog does what you want, unless the thing you want has duration. Like if it's potty, I would wait for him to complete pottying, then say thanks, and then follow it up with the treat. Don't say thanks and start offering the treat. Say thanks, then go grab the treat and reward the dog. Then we also talked about cues. Cues is a command word, we used to call them, and a cue means I want you to sit. So I might lure the dog into a sit, and as soon as his butt hits the ground, I say thanks, which is his marker word, and I give him that treat. Then I might lure him away and do that 5 or 6 times. Then I might say sit, and then lure him, he sits, and then I say thanks when he sits, and then I pop the treat in his mouth. Remember to say the marker word in the same consistent tone. Don't be too excited. And that's really a foundation for dog learning. Now, we also went over hand targeting. And one of the things you guys might want to do on cues real quick is make a list of the official cues. A lot of times we come up with a whole lot of variations if the dog speaks English. Come here, over here boy, dog's name. That's a whole lot of variety. If we always say here or come, it makes it easier for him. So we also... There we go. The guardian's already ahead of the game. So we have somebody walking by. Normally he would be barking, but the guardian is doing a hand targeting exercise. And look at that dog right up there on his stoop. I know he's barking now, but that is incredible because that dog was like literally on the other side of the fence and he wasn't aware of it until he looked in that direction. And so the person there I think has like a retractable leash, which is one of the reasons why I don't like retractable leashes, because your dog often does this sort of thing. And that's okay, but I'd rather have a straight leash. Now, right now, Yoshi is in a hysterical state of mind. Now, that's okay, I have a mic here, so it's not going to be as loud. But when your dog is hysterical like this, it's not listening to you, you can't rationalize it, and is not doing it on purpose. That's what a lot of people think. So, Yoshi, puppy, 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 puppy. Thanks. There we go. All right. So we also went over hand targeting. I have a video on hand targeting, but practice that one. Remember, and for one of the guardians, she was throwing it right in front of his nose like she is right now. So make sure you do it on the right side of the face or the left side of the face. And the progression is turn, lean, step, and then multiple steps. Practice that one inside, and eventually you want to just say boop as you throw your hand. The dog touches his nose, your hand. Then you say thanks, and then put a treat on your hand. I have a video for that if you forgot how to do that. We also went over the positive interrupter that's making that kissing sound. As long as he's not reactive, try to use the kissing sound anytime you want to get his attention or distract him from doing something you don't want him to do. But when you distract him, then follow up with a hand targeting. So he comes to you, he gets rewarded for coming to you, and then give him something else to do so he doesn't go back and do the unwanted thing that he was doing before. We also went over, petting with a purpose and passive training. Most of us never teach our dogs how to say please or thank you or appropriate boundaries or manners the same way we do for kids. With kids, we give them a do-over. Daddy, go, I want a piece of pizza. Would you like to ask for that again? Do-over. Daddy, can I please have a piece of pizza? Yep, here you go. Same thing for the dog. So when the dog nudges you or paws at you, he's saying, let me on that lap, damn it. Would you like to ask for that again? Sit. And if the dog sits, then we say the marker word and pet here, 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 or here, and pet as much or as little, or invite the dog up, or whatever it is that we want to do. Now, if we don't do that, or if the dog doesn't listen, and I'm just ignoring him for this one, and the dog doesn't listen to you, there's no punishment, there's no retribution, there's no scolding. Just show the dog you're living your best life. Watch some TV, read a magazine, paint a portrait, do something else, so the dog recognizes all I had to do is sit and I'd get that attention. I didn't sit and they were on to the next thing and I'm the one missing out. After a while, the dog will start sitting to prepay or offer for that attention. When he does, make sure you mark and reward that. And now you've conditioned your dog that sitting is a way of saying, please pet me, please give your attention. That's very polite. He's asking versus telling. Use the watchword of manners. If you come in the room, see somebody's petting Yoshi, he's standing, you might suspect that person forgot to ask him to do something. You say manners. That person says, oh yeah, shit. Yoshi, they stop petting, say sit, he sits. And then they say thanks and reward him and say, actually, I asked him to do it. Even if you're doing it right, it gives you another opportunity to practice it again. We also went over celebrating, which is rewarding voluntarily behaviors the dog offers that are desired behaviors that are offered voluntarily. The ones I'd like you to emphasize are coming to you, sitting, laying down, looking at you, both in the house as well as on walks, drinking water, going to the bathroom, going to the dog bed, really anything that you want the dog that is a desirable behavior. So you mark and then follow it up within 2 seconds of reward. And remember, when he does it, you have maximum of 2 seconds to say the marker word, but really we want to say it at the same time or at the end of it if it has duration. We also went over, the watchword is celebrate for what we call capturing or passive training. So if somebody says, if Yoshi walks up to me and sits down and I don't see it, Danny might say to me, celebrate. And I would just say, thanks, and pet him as fast as I can. I don't have to ask. I don't reach for a treat. I'm already too late. So Danny says, celebrate. I just say thanks, and then I pet him. And then later on, I can start watching. I see Yoshi out of the corner of my eye walking towards me, and I might say, come. And then he comes to me, I say yes, or thanks, and I give him that treat. So now we're teaching the dog what it can do to get our attention in a positive way. I don't like to say good or bad because we say bad and we imply intent. For him, that's what he's doing. It's just genuine and unique. It's authentic. We just need to condition him and train him. These are the things that you can do to get attention from me. It's the same way we do with our partners. Our partners like us to say please or thank you or don't do this or do that. We do these things because those people are important to us. The dog wants to do those things. I just think that the humans in this case have been a little bit confusing to the dog, which is hardly unique. Almost all of my clients do the same exact thing, which is why I kind of do the same session for this first session for almost all my dogs. So, all right, so say manners. If you want to pet the dog or the dog is demanding attention from you, and the person's doing it without intent, somebody else does manners to them, they stop doing it, give the dog an opportunity to do it right. If they do it the first and only time you ask, then you say mark a word and pet them. If they don't, you go back to do whatever it was you were doing and the dog missed out. That will motivate them next time to listen to you more. So petting with a purpose is if you want to pet the dog or the dog is asking you to pet it, you're going to ask it to sit. Celebrating is just waiting anytime the dog offers a desired behavior. You say your marker word and pet it. I usually only pet for celebrate. You can give treats too, but I didn't ask for the sit, but I do want to reward it. I'm just not going to over reward it, if that makes sense. We also talked about the importance of exercise, sniffing on walks, games of tug of war, playing fetch, play dates with other dogs. However, with play dates with other dogs, we don't want to let the energy level get too high. So anytime the dog's energy level gets beyond 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, what I like to do is I like to do it with hand targeting if we can. Sometimes if we let them get too aroused, it's hard for them to come back. If we have to, if I'm a dog, I take my hands like this, put it on the dog's thighs, and I pull the dog backwards. And as soon as the dog turns its head, I say thanks, marker word, and I offer a treat. This is why I call it a treat out and not a timeout. The other guardian should be doing the same thing with their dog. Then you take the dogs apart, you do a little hand targeting, a couple of exercises. I call it rapid fire training for attention. So you start doing a couple exercises, sit, thanks, treat, down, thanks, treat, hand target, thanks, treat, over here, thanks, treat. Dog has forgotten about the other dog, it's dialed into you, and its energy has come down. When the energy comes down to like a 2-3 level, then you let them play again. The more treat outs you give now, the less you'll have to give later. That's physical exercise, but there's also mental stimulation. Feeding out of a snuffle mat. Kongs filled with peanut butter, a lick mat, scent games, training. These are all sniff walks, other scent games are all great ways to burn energy. What I'd like the guardians to do is Google scent games, but come up with a routine. So maybe in the morning we take them out for potty and a short little walk, bring it back inside, and after exercise they always need 10 minutes after physical exercise to catch his breath. Then you feed him out of a snuffle mat, and I'll talk about feeding here in a sec. And then after that, he's like, I know I've only been up an hour, but I could take a nap. And he goes and sleeps. And then 2 hours later, maybe you do some scent games, cookie in the corner. An hour after that, maybe you take him out for a little walk. An hour after that, you play tug of war. Hour after that, you give him a couple hours, you give him a lick mat. So throughout the day, we're getting this shorter burst of either physical exercise or mental stimulation to keep him satisfied, stimulated, and to keep his energy from concentrating and be ready to erupt the next time somebody comes by the house. Come up with your own rhythm and also recognize that exercise and mental stimulation can set him up for success. If you're going to do some exercises, the exercise that I have in the video above, take him out for some tug of war first, give him 10 minutes rest, then go and practice that exercise. If you know that a guest is coming over, take him for a walk that ends 15 minutes before the guest arrives. If you have a crazy dog on a walk, play fetch in the backyard, give him 10 minutes rest, then take him for a walk. So you can do things to set your dog up for success, and recognizing that your dog's going to need those things helps your dog be in a better mood and easier for you to get their attention, and then easier for them to practice not reacting, not barking, not jumping up, and so on. Let me see. So try to alternate between that. He probably needs about every 3 or 4 hours, unless something is coming up, then set him up for success. We also talked about the importance of rules and structure. A lot of us don't really have a lot of rules for our dog. We look at rules as a negative, and so we don't want to be mean to our dog, so we don't have any rules. Dogs have to practice everything they do. A great way for your dog to practice if you don't want your dog to lunge or bark or bite, you have to help them practice waiting for things. So rules are a wonderful way for them to practice that. So you might want to have your dog sit before you start preparing the food. And then sit, wait for permission to eat the food that's in the bowl. I think the guardian's already done that. Well, actually, the guardian's here free feed. Let's talk about that. So basically, dogs, because they spend so much time, he's about to sleep with his head up, which I love. No, he just crashed. But dogs spend about 90% of their time, wild dogs, up to 90% of their time looking for food. So when we leave food in the bowl all the time, we rob them of a lot of motivation. If you take food away while they're there, you can create a resource guarding situation. So what I do is I put the food down, I invite the dog over and give it a reasonable period of time to eat. But as soon as the dog walks away and walks out of the eyesight, I pick up the bowl, dump it back in the bag, and I put the empty bowl back down. That's important, put the empty bowl back down. Then there's no food again until the next meal. I feed my dogs 3 times a day. I would recommend 2 or more times a day. And then it's not, oh, you could have eaten, but you didn't, so no, none of that. Just if you don't want to eat, more power to you. But the kitchen is closed. Hunger eventually becomes your ally. And so eventually when he's eating, when he takes his first bite of food, say thanks, and then he eats his food. And eventually you might want to come up with a funny word, call it sushi or ramen or lasagna, or whatever it is. So the dog's sitting waiting for permission, and then you say lasagna as you tap the bowl, and he comes over and he eats the food. That becomes the command word to eat. Let me see, what else? So that's feeding. It'll for the guardians here, because he's been free fed, I think I would practice. It's going to take about a week. So again, dump that food, put the bowl down. When you get to the point where you can put the food down, and he comes over to eat right away. Well, that's the time that we could maybe ask him to sit and wait. If you have difficulty with doing that, we don't want to pull the bowl away. That's negative punishment. I have a video on something called the bucket game that teaches dog to sit there while you lower the food down to the floor and wait for permission. Happy to share that with you if you want. But look for other opportunities for these rules. Sit before I pick you up and bring you on the couch. Sit before I pick you up and put you on the bed. Sit before I attach your leash. Sit at the door before I let you out. Sit to pet. The more that you ask the dog to restrain itself or to offer a behavior in order to get a behavior, They're practicing listening to you. They're practicing, you're practicing creating a healthy leader-follower dynamic. And we're taking a lot of the pressure off him. He doesn't think he's in charge of the world. I think he thinks he's in charge of the world, or at least part of Santa Monica. And so we need him to understand that that's not his job. His guardians are going to set him up for success. Now, a lot of us, have a dog like for him, he's reactive on walks. It's more convenient just to walk outside my neighborhood, but we're going to run into a whole bunch of dogs. What I'd like you to do is for a month, avoid doing that. I'd like you to go through your Rolodex, go through your phone contact list, contact your friends with dogs, ask them to meet you that live in the area, ask them to meet you at a park so you practice the exercise in the video above. If you want to walk him, drive him to the park, drive him to the, what's the park by the golf course that's nearby? So go to a park where you can walk with a great distance. The more that he sees dogs and barks at them, right there, tell him to sit.
Sit.
Only once. There you go. Thanks, and then pick him up. And then bring him up. He was digging, he was saying, let me up on your lap. No, sit, and then I'll pick you up. If you don't sit, you don't get the privilege. So I'd like you to avoid walking him on the streets and take him to one of those parks. Find one that's close by. So it's a green area. Remember, let him sniff as much as he wants. Find a park that has that path so you can practice the stuff there. But I'd like you to spend a month really practicing. The only time he sees dogs or when you're practicing that exercise, and you get closer and closer and closer. So if you practice only positive experiences and you don't take him out on regular walks so he sees other dogs, that's going to accelerate your process of him barking less, and the guardian here is a little bit frustrated with his barking, which is normal. We feel embarrassed. We feel like people are looking at us like our dog's not well behaved, and he's just having a panic attack, and he's a corona dog. He just didn't get it socialized with enough puppies because of coronavirus, which a lot of people have that problem. But we need to fix it. Small breed dogs, their personality solidifies at 2 years old. Large breed is typically 3 years old. So you have about a year and a month left to really work on this. After that period of time, the behavior that he gives is probably going to be consistent. So you're really in a good opportunity. We'd prefer to have fixed it and not let it get here, but here we are, so we're going to work on this stuff here. Now, we talked about a whole lot of stuff in this session that didn't seem to be related to the barking and the lunging, but really it's setting that foundation. I think when it comes to barking, there's essentially two problems here. Barking territorially in the area because I'm on duty and I'm protecting my humans, and that's how I contribute to the betterment of this group. And I'm insecure when I see dogs on walk, so I act aggressive to get them to go away, and it seems to work in both cases. So remember to do the dowels on the wood here and over there, so the dog can't see through the fence. Try to limit his access to being out here when it's high traffic area. I know it's a high traffic area, but if there's times of the day where it's higher traffic area, those are times we try to avoid or set him up for success. Exercise him right before the high traffic time. Then have him inside and play a little bit of music. Put that white paper on the bottom of your windows like I mentioned, and then practice doing some training, then give him a bully stick or a lick mat. Eventually, it'd be nice if you could have like a lick mat up here and put a baby gate right there. So he can't get beyond here. He can't run all the way to the fence because that's practicing that. So now he practices being up here, and if you get him into the lick mat, he's like, oh, I would bark at your ass right now, but I'm busy licking up this peanut butter. What is he doing? He's practicing not barking. He's practicing a dog passing by without freaking out. He can't get to it. I don't like to restrain too much because that can create frustration. But we want to create situations to help the dog practice the behavior we want. I want the guardians to be mindful of one of the guardians when she's doing the exercise. If the dog's down here, she's holding the leash up here. Try to avoid that. It's a very common thing. A lot of people do that. Just try to keep your hand, just like even hook your thumb around your leggings or around your treat pouch. So you're just kind of keeping your hand with the leash there. And we want to avoid putting tension on the leash or pulling the dog away because that will reactivate more of the behavior we don't want. The pouch that I have is a mini treat pouch from Pet Safe, one word. You can order them at Amazon or Chewy. You get the small one, it's like this big. It's not, but I just prefer the smaller one. Also, make sure you celebrate those eye contacts. Every time you're sitting at home and he looks up at you, thanks, and give him a treat. So, and do that on walks, but you have to do it in the house first. And then when you're on a walk and there's nobody around and he looks at you, thanks, and give him the treat. People are like, but I don't need to do it then because there's no dogs around. He's not freaking out. He's never going to do it when dogs are around if you don't do it when it's easy and establish the behavior pattern first. So always, we call it going back to school. If he doesn't do something in level 3, go to level 2, go to level 1, go to level half of 1. Always back up a couple steps until you find a level that he can react or he can perform the way that you want him to. All right, let me think what else. We also went over, did I talk about rules in this video yet? So not being allowed in the kitchen, not being allowed around people who are eating, having to sit at the door before we open the door to let them out, having to sit before we even pick up the leash to attach it. Sit before you even start preparing food. I guess I talked about this a little bit. But the more you do that and ask him to sit and wait for things and wait for permission and do things to ask for permission, the more he is acquiescing and kind of seeing you providing him that safe environment. I hate saying the word alpha or leader because all these dominance trainers have ruined that. There's no such thing as alpha when it comes to dogs or wolves. It's based on a faulty study. But leadership, they call it, dominating the dog and showing him who's boss. And none of that works. We just want to create positive associations, but we also want to help the dog see us. I'm not putting you in a situation where there's other dogs around. I'm not putting you in a scenario where you feel like you need to handle it. I'm putting you in situations where it's super easy. And if there's a problem, I mind and take care of it myself before you even have a chance to. So he practices not having to do that. The more that happens, the more that behavior becomes a pattern. Behavior is a pattern, either in a way that you like or a way that you don't like. So if you don't like your dog's behavior, you got to avoid situations where it practices that behavior and at the same time counter practice or work on in an environment where he can do the things you want in a very ease level, then go to a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher. And if he wants to get down, try to just, whenever possible, let him do it. Try to avoid restraining him. Now I mentioned getting a snuffle mat. I'm leaving you the Tricky Trainer Omega Paw treat ball, but there's other treat dispensing toys and puzzles. And I would try to feed him half of his meal out of the snuffle mat, the other half out of maybe this ball one meal, then we have a different one for a different toy for another meal, so half of the snuffle mat, half of the toy. So he's working for his food. And also for mental stimulation, training is a great way to burn energy. It's also a great way to engender a great leader-follower dynamic. So trying to teach him some new skills and manners, not only does it help him see you acting like a leader, it gives you different ways to redirect him. Remember, if he's reacting, move away from the away from whatever it is. Sometimes you have to move around a car or a shrub or something like that. And once you get him around, he can't see the thing, then ask for some hand targeting. Ask for the sits and downs and all that. Help him reinvigorate with you, and then try to go back to it, or wait for the other dog or whatever it is to pass by. Let me see, what else? I think that's pretty much it. This is, by the time you see this is going to be too late, but tonight, make sure that after I leave, give him about an hour, and then you can use his kibble or treats. Just walk around the house and say thanks, give him a treat, and then about 10 minutes later, do that about 10 or 12 treats. About 10 minutes later, the other person grabs the clicker, click, treat, walk a couple steps, click, treat. You only have to do that 2 or 3 times, and then after that, just make sure you say your marker word when he does the things you want, and then follow it up with a reward. And when you're 90% certain he's going to do it, then you can say sit, he sits, you click or say thanks, then you give him a treat. And eventually you say sit, he sits. You don't have to say click or thanks because he knows what it is. You just give him that treat. All right, well, I would show you Yoshi, but he is off camera, but he just jumped on the chair and he's laying down to get himself a nap because it's supposed to be a 3-hour session. I think we're about 5 hours. That's all right. This is a bonus of loving what you do. I'm David. That's Yoshi, and this is Yoshi's Roadmap to Success. Remember, when it comes to dog, remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.